Who would have thought we'd be starting with Real Madrid against Shakhtar Donetsk as Shakhtar Donetsk beat Zinedine Zidane's side by 3-2 as we welcome in Ali Moreno and Stevie Nicol to the show. And what makes this result even more extraordinary, boys, is that Shakhtar had 13 players missing because of COVID, yet they were 3-0 up in the first half. Stevie, that first half performance from Real Madrid was one of the worst that I think I can remember from one of the big boys ever. It was so inept.
Where do you start? I mean, clearly defensively, you talk about an absolute and utter shambles. I mean, even Varane, who's supposed to be the man there to organise them all, was caught out of position every single time that Shakhtar went forward. In fact, every time Shakhtar went forward, they looked as though they would score. They were actually unfortunate that they went 5-0 up at half-time. I mean, Real Madrid were absolutely atrocious. Nobody in the front line did anything to try and help defensively. The middle of the park, well, there was just invisible. Casemiro, you wouldn't have known he was on the field. And of course, in particular, the two centre-backs, Varane and Militao, were absolutely awful. As I said, you can only sum it up by saying it should have been 5 against a reserve team. My goodness, I think there'll be some harsh words in Madrid right now, and certainly tomorrow in training, and there should be a few looking in the mirror and figuring out where they played their part in this disaster.
On that point, though, Ali, they come into this game off the back of a terrible performance and a home defeat against Cadiz. So you think, right, that's the kick up the backside they need to go in there and wipe Shakhtar out. Yet that first half, just mentally, no one seemed to be there.
And that's the scary part for Real Madrid fans, Dan. You're absolutely correct. The fact that you lose to Cadiz in a manner in which you did, in where that game should have and could have been over after the first 20 minutes. Cadiz had 4 or 5 clear scoring opportunities. They score one, in the end they hang on 1-0. But Cadiz were the better team against Real Madrid, playing at home, and it didn't matter. Cadiz were far superior to Real Madrid. So you think, okay, well, that has to get the attention of the players. That has to get the attention of everybody involved with this organization, with this club. It's okay, all right, now we're going to start Champions League. This is where we thrive. This is where historically we've been the most successful. This is a moment of competitive pride. We have to show this. We are Real Madrid. We are playing at home. And then you watch the first half and you said, wait a minute, there was no reaction. It got worse. How could it have gotten worse from the game against Cadiz? The game against Cadiz was terrible. This is terrible -1. To me, Real Madrid in the first half were just flat out embarrassing. The lack of urgency, the lack of intensity, how much they pass the ball side to side to side and side again and to the side again. Never really looking to penetrate, no movement ahead of the ball, no movement with the ball. And as it pertains to Eder Militao and Rafael Varane, they were missing their daddy. Daddy wasn't there. Yeah. Sergio Ramos wasn't there to hold their hands through the game, and so they can't think on their own. They can't tackle the ball. All of a sudden, in the first goal, there's a chance for Militao to tackle the ball. He doesn't tackle the ball. All of a sudden, there's a chance for Rafael Varane to cover the spaces that he needs to be in. No, he gets pulled out of position time and time again. So if Sergio Ramos doesn't play, does that mean that Varane cannot play? Does that mean that Eder Militao cannot play? Apparently not.
Embarrassing is a good word to use, actually, Ali. Yeah, go on, Stevie.
You know, a huge part of this has to go down at the doorstep of Zidane. Because as a coach, when you're playing against a side that had the problems that they have and they're coming in, you know it's the reserve team, you really shouldn't need to talk about tactics or any of the technical stuff or any of that. The only scary thing for a coach going into this game is that the players don't go complacent. And I think that's where, you know, it's one thing for Zidane to be cool and calm and collected and always looks as though he's in control. Sometimes you have to be making a noise. Sometimes you have to be going around, putting your finger in people's faces and saying, well, the one thing we have, if I was the coach of Real Madrid today, the last thing, The only thing I'd have been saying the whole hour before the game was, don't you dare get complacent today.
Right.
Don't you dare take your eye off the ball. Don't. That's the only thing I would do. I wouldn't be talking about all the other stuff. It's about do not be complacent. And that is down to the coach. And the fact that this team started and played the first half the way they did, I'm sorry, that has to be left at the door of Zidane more than the players.
Obviously, we're not in the locker room.
That's all good and well. That's all good and well, Dan. And I agree with Stevie in terms of the mentality of the team. But how can you be complacent after you were played off the park by Cadiz? By Cadiz. This game should have been 4-0 after the 20 minutes in that game over the weekend. So there is no room for complacency here. There's nothing for Real Madrid to be complacent about, to be proud of. What exactly have you done this season? You just lost to Cadiz, for goodness sakes. So I understand where the criticism should be pointed towards Zinedine Zidane, but at some point you also have to say, wait a minute, if they didn't get the message after the game over the weekend, if Champions League doesn't get your attention, if the urgency of Champions League and what it means to this institution doesn't get your attention, then what does? What is going to get the attention of Luka Jovic? He is nothing more, and we've talked about this in the past, he's nothing more than a warm body out on the field. And you can say that about many players for Real Madrid currently, that they're just kind of running around looking like they're doing their job, but not really, and not truly engaged in what the task is at hand. This team right now is in trouble.
One thing from the Shakhtar perspective, which I thought kind of worked out pretty cool, was the fact that that late equaliser was disallowed. And as much as we moan about VAR, and a lot of people complained about it, obviously the goal was initially given, then rightly chalked off, Stevie. That's what it's difficult for people saying you need to get rid of VAR, the game is gone, when you see incidents like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, Dan, it's kind of it's the nature of everybody that we only talk about VAR when it goes wrong, generally. You know, when was the last time we were talking about VAR the way we are now, in the light of that was a great decision?
Yeah.
And you're correct. It was fantastic. That's what VAR is all about. And even though there was VAR, I'm still thinking, wait a minute, this is Real Madrid. This is in Madrid. Even though it should be chalked off, there's still half a chance. But no, you're absolutely correct. And unfortunately, it's not going to happen too often where we actually say VAR was great. But I think because of what we've witnessed over the weekend, that's why it's sort of in our mind and why we should say well done to the people behind VAR.
Ali, looking ahead to the Clásico, of course, the next game for Real Madrid against Barcelona. Big picture. If you're a Real Madrid supporter, there isn't really much optimism going into that game, or pretty much for the rest of the season, when you look at how drab and dire they have been pretty much for most of this campaign.
Right, and so we just said losing to Cadiz didn't get your attention. Playing in Champions League didn't get your attention, and so you have to believe that if you're a Real Madrid player, this is the last chance to get your attention. If El Clásico doesn't get the attention of this group of players, then forget it. Then both Zinedine Zidane and the players, not only do they have to answer questions, but in the case of Zinedine Zidane, you also have to say, Zizou, honestly, this is 3 games in a row in which these players have no urgency, no intensity, no tackling, no defending, no attacking, no creativity, no goals. So I just think overall, as they go into this game, there could not be a less ideal build-up for El Clásico for Real Madrid, which then tells me that then come the weekend, Real Madrid are going to be great. Because historically, when they've been down, this is how they bounce right up. But it doesn't feel like that. It really doesn't. You look at this team, and even when they're winning games, it's hard work, really hard work. Everything is so deliberate in the attack, and defending is a problem for them. And so if Sergio Ramos is not back for El Clásico, and I can't believe I'm saying this in front of Stevie Nicol, if Sergio Ramos is not back for El Clásico, then you look at that back line and you go, oh my goodness, these guys do not know what they're doing when Sergio Ramos is not on the field.
Stevie, even you with your anti-Ramos ways have got to agree with that.
No question they'll miss him. I mean, because the alternatives are an absolute and utter disaster. I mean, what can they do? You know Marcelo's going to play left back, but we know he can't defend. He's fantastic going forward. Varane's really struggling. Another own goal in the Champions League. Mendy was absolutely awful. And Militao, I mean, he looked like a kid that had been thrown in at the deep end. So they don't have any options. You know, maybe Nacho comes in. But where do you play him? Do you put him right back because you don't have anything else there? Or do you get rid of Militao and stick him in the middle with Varane? I'd probably do that. But my goodness, you know, choices and every single one bad when Ramos is not playing.
Ali, thank you very much. Stevie, stay with us. Just to emphasise how important Sergio Ramos is, for Real Madrid's last 8 Champions League matches, they've won 1 and lost 7 when Ramos hasn't played. This is the first time ever that Real Madrid have started a Champions League campaign with a defeat at home, and no team has lost its opener and gone on to win the Champions League. I tell you what, Real Madrid absolutely miles away from getting anywhere close to that conversation at the moment.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.